It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
When I'm going to go right back to when I'm willing to feel my feelings, when I'm willing to release them and untangle them from all the stories, all the attachments to the whys and the whos and the ought tos and the should haves and so forth and so on. When I untangle them, I just allow them out, which you and I have been building practices over the last year plus. I mean, probably our whole lives.
The stories loosen, but the thoughts don't stop. There's another order of stories.
Yeah, but I'm with you, and we'll go there. We really will. But I just want to say that what opens up for me is this element of possibility, this whole opening. And I become, we had a conversation the other day on the phone where it's like I went through this sort of dark, felt very dark, it felt very heavy, but I moved through it with this level of consciousness and awareness of what I was doing. And on the other side of it, I was on it the other day. I was clear as a bell because I'd cleared out all this clutter of messages and stories, layered upon stories that were like weighing on me that I needed to release. I think that's the language. In releasing these stories, we open up to a level of clarity, but also a possibility that lies beyond the constriction of our stories.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes complete sense to me. It feels great just even to hear it.
Yeah.
And we unhook the relationship, the stories that we hold so tightly. We're able to unhook those when we feel the feelings. And then there's a new order of thought. So much of what we hear, what you in the conversations that you and I are have the benefit of being exposed to, so much of that is a scold around thinking, a scold around doing, a scold around will and action, a scold around masculine energy.
Well, it's a representation of the imbalance. So it's but you're right. It ends up feeling
and
very
that
much
it's
like
all,
a scold.
The cure is
right.
we just feel and touch, and that is that is a recipe for a different iteration of what we're doing right now.
Right.
What we're moving into balance. What we have been doing. We're moving into a balance now, but we have had an imbalance around will and action, and at the expense of imagining and feeling. And so to blow off will and action in favor of just imagining and feeling is a different kind of chauvinism. Let's broom the old chauvinism and bring in the new chauvinism.
Right.
So the balance is, I know it's what you and I are striving for. We talk about it all the time and almost every day. There's something that comes up that we have the benefit of looking deeply into. And this piece always seems to be there, Finding the balance.
It's a big theme.
Unhooking the tyranny of the thinking patterns, becoming more intimate with the feeling, developing a relationship with the feeling, which is then engenders a new set of thoughts arise, a different order of thoughts arise, and they work hand in glove.
Yeah, it's great. I like what you said about the scolding and the reaction to the imbalance that then in itself causes an imbalance, that it's coming to it gently, lightly, and I'm feeling self-conscious about overusing the word generous and generative because we've used it a lot. But I just feel like it is a generous offer, that we can move into this with a perspective that we don't have to kill, sides of ourselves. We don't have to judge the adaptive qualities and traits that we've taken on. The stories that we
love them.
We have to love them. That's it. You're moving towards them.
We go from being identified with those things.
Right.
And so we hate ourselves. We look in the mirror and we say, I hate that. It's because I'm so identified. That's narcissism.
Yeah.
So I'm so identified with it that I push it away.
Yeah.
Or I am entranced by it.
Mm.
So we move from being identified into being relational.
Relational.
If I can relate to it, if I can put it outside of me, because right now it is me, but if I take it outside of me, I can now begin to relate to it. I can hear from it. And when I relate to it and it the charge goes out, then I can reintegrate it.
Yep.
So we go. I'm moving in my own process from being identified with these things to relating to these things, and now discovering moments of, wow, something else is different. From relating, I'm actually going into partnership with certain kinds of these fragmented selves.
Yeah.
These fragments of my beingness who are basically in arrested development, and emotionally and spiritually and psychologically from whatever age, and have been reactive, and who I get triggered, and suddenly this 7-year-old boy I'm behaving like a petulant 7-year-old boy, or I'm behaving like a hip swaggering, righteous, cocky teenage adolescent. Not that all adolescents are that, but unfortunately, I was. But beginning to see where that starts to play out with me, and I would hate it for so long. I hated it.
Oh, I'm so.
And I would just attack it. I would just be so judgmental and down on myself, and then for a long time, beginning to put it outside of me and relate to it and hear from him and understand. Any young man who came through the experience that he came through would have that kind of a relationship with life. And he did the best that he could. And that's how he figured he could make life work. And I can love that. I can understand that. I can have empathy for that. And I don't have to slam it. It's me.
Yeah.
And it took a while, and that's more and more happening. And lo and behold, another piece suddenly emerges, that I can be in partnership with that guy. He's no longer somebody who tweaks me out in that way or triggers me out in that way. And he has gifts. He has energy. He has vision. Mm-hmm. He has a perspective on life that is full of possibility and full of promise. He has gifts for me. And I can partner with that little dude.
I love the flip.
Did I actually say dude?
Yeah.
I said it on the radio.
That's
too.
all right. You'll be okay. Are you judging the
I
body?
can love that guy.
You can love
the
guy that says dude.
He slipped in.
You're a surfer.
Well,
you surf sometimes. So we'll go with that.
He actually slipped in.
Yeah, he did slip in and took over your language.
And
he spoke
I'm
for
going
you.
to love him, and I love you, and I'm going to live my life. So
yeah.
That guy, not...
This is so interesting because you and I just had this conversation. We were talking. I'll use this context. Let's go back to when you did the moth story.
Oh, yeah.
And we met the guy.
The moth story, for our listeners, moth is a... well, why don't you explain what
it's it's a storytelling competition. It's a competition, and it happens in several cities.
Not that I'm comparing much.
This is a big deal. But the reason I brought it up is this. There was a person who we came to call the Weasel. Now that seems horrible, but what we were recognizing...
that was at a screening, the Weasel.
Oh, was that?
That was a film screening.
It doesn't matter. The point is this, that what both of us became aware of was that the Weasel was us, and what we were seeing is it was reflecting back to us a part of
the
us
Weasel
that is desperate for attention and needs to be affirmed and wants to be good enough and wants
to belong and wants to be noticed and wants to be in the crew and wants to be.
So the going back to this conversation, and I've been doing this with Clever Boy. That Clever Boy's been coming up for me, and I'm so
Clever
reactive.
Boy for our listeners. We can't just pull out these things without unpacking a little bit.
Explain Clever Boy.
You explain Clever Boy. I'm not going to.
Clever Boy, for me,
to do that
is the adaptive trait of trying to work the system, of trying to be clever, of not. It's not about being honest. It's about being manipulative. It's I'm very aware
of the trickster. It's sort of that trickster energy and coyote energy in Native American. It's that energy that says, I can
get away with something.
Out of my cunning.
That's right.
Out of my cunning, I can always find an angle.
Yeah.
And sometimes, often, usually, that trickster energy gets us into trouble because it is not power that is authentically discovered. It is sort of this jivey, developmentally appropriate, but it is this energy of from early on in our life that thinks I can dance my way through.
Well,
stars.
my collective experience. So again, we see the collective as a mirror, is that the trickster is very much getting us in trouble, whether it's in banking or in any other capacity. Right now we see all this greed behavior, which is all clever boy in my experience. That's how I view it. I view it as a mirror. So I react so strongly right now to greed and to people working in the system and so forth and so on. And I recognize it as a mirror and I go, oh my gosh, that's clever boy.
Yeah,
and
shadow piece.
It's a huge shadow piece for me because I identified with clever boy, and I always felt like I'll be okay because I can work an angle. I can find, no matter what happens, I'll be okay because I've got clever boy, and I really developed this clever boy. What I recognized though was that it always kept people at arm's distance. People were objectified. I couldn't really let people in because I was always working my shtick.
And because if you let them in, they will find out who you really
That's
are.
Right.
So
That's
you can
right.
never,
I'll be
it
exposed.
self-selects out.
That's it.
It is antithetical to having meaningful relationships.
Yes.
to
Closeness,
having vulnerable
intimacy,
relationships,
vulnerability.
to seeing another person, and
yes.
you don't see another person until you're willing to be seen. So
Beautiful.
immediately it separates.
So my work about clever boy, my work about the weasel that I see reflected back, similar in that they're aspects within me, is to own those parts and love those parts and not kill them, which has been a real challenge because it's really come up for me that clever boy is bad and I need to cut him out versus allowing for that aspect in me to just be mirrored back and go, how do I want to be with that energy within me that I'm seeing reflected in
He's not.
whatever.
He's not bad. He's
not
not
bad.
wrong. He is. It is an inappropriate use of energy for an adult man.
At this point in my life, it doesn't
But
work.
it doesn't mean that you want to lay a bunch of stuff on him. You just don't want him driving your life.
That's right. We don't want him driving the bus, as we said, and we don't want it below the waterline. We don't want this to be something that's laying down there that we don't pay attention to, and then it leaps up or leaks out, and we find ourselves in a position where we go, how did I get here? Because we weren't paying attention to clever boy, the weasel, whatever. And again, when we see this reflected in society, the outer mirror, the big mirror of a scandal. We talked the other day about the Joe Paterno scandal and how that was so much about the identified self, and these shadow pieces were so shameful and so, we couldn't reconcile them. They were irreconcilable. So instead of acknowledging and addressing what was actually going on, the inclination was to ignore it and suppress it and repress it. And it jumps up.
Everything is a metaphor.
Everything's a
We're
metaphor.
all poets in
That's
that way.
it.
Everything's
That's
a
it.
metaphor. So today we were talking about with Spence, our producer and engineer and crack musicologist, and I could go on. Everything. We were talking about this piranha story.
Oh, that's right.
We read somewhere that beachgoers in Brazil, who goes to a beach on the Amazon?
No, it was the Amazon River.
On the
Yeah,
Amazon River. That's not beach, that's bait. So,
well, that's what happened.
That's exactly what happened. Like 15
piranhas.
people had their toes removed by piranhas.
I'm not laughing.
So I'm not.
It's horrible. Yeah.
You're much more politically correct than I am. It's hysterical. I can have compassion, but I live in the real world. I love comedies. They were bit. So whatever else it is, why would I have something like, if everything is a mirror, what treasure can I get from that? And it speaks to exactly this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are many other things, but what goes on below the waterline of our awareness that if we pay attention is nibbling at our toes. And if you pay attention, it's only a nibble. If you don't pay attention, you lose your toe. And if you still don't pay attention,
if you keep going deeper, it could go after another appendage, which would be really unfortunate.
that would be
all right, listen,
really
we're
unfortunate.
going to leave that live. But the point being that it's the ability to see below the waterline, to take ownership of the entire self.
To pay attention to what the metaphors that are in the mirror.
Yeah.
And, lots of times I think, God, it just never ends. When's it going to be over? And what part of me says that?
Yeah.
It's the part that doesn't want to be in charge. That part would much rather work and labor and struggle through life, going through the old rule,
Yeah.
going through by the old rule
Oh,
book.
I totally understand that.
Then if I do that and I unhook it, the energy dissipates, and suddenly I'm open. I'm open to dream rather than be dreamed by other people's rule books that I buy into. I am open to synchronicity. I'm open to freeing up a whole bunch of otherwise structured imagination that is now free to come back and to be visited upon me in a whole different
It's so interesting because
co-creation.
if we really pay attention, for me personally, it's glaring at me, this split between old paradigm, new paradigm. I'm constantly drawing in experiences to remind myself of the rules. And it's a constant sort of gut check, if you will, to go, what's going on in my gut? What's real for me and true for me that I can tap into? Versus, again, what we started with was this is a perpetuating cycle of here's the rules, here's how you play it, here's the story. Oh, yeah, that's a story, that's a story, that's a story. Versus unhooking these stories, allowing myself to have an organic, in-the-moment experience, allow for the feelings to come up and go, oh, I'm in there, oh, this is it. And become more lucid in this dream that I call my life. That's the gooey good stuff. And yet, it's scary. I get it. I'm in the middle of it. You're in the middle of it. It's not.
Gets less scary.
It does get less scary.
Eventually,
Yeah.
I'm starting to get tired of going and boo to myself.
Right. You're getting too old.
You
for
know,
this.
it's always life. The road always rises to meet me, and I'm not going to say that I don't get triggered. I do. But I'm not as attached to it.
That's beautiful.
I'm not as attached to it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So that's an invitation.
That's an invitation.
That's an invitation for my subconscious to say, "Oh yeah." I don't think my subconscious works that way, but you are met at the level that you're willing to be met, and I'm careful about what I desire and expect and imagine. And I want to be challenged. And I also ask, and I offer this to our listeners, ask that the challenges be gentle.
Yeah. And the word careful, that we care. We fully care,
And care.
for the parts of us that come up and for the aspects of us that we want to generate. It's a beautiful offer. And with that, we have
Through
come
the end of another podcast here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. If you liked the show, we invite you to listen again and to listen to other programs that we have on our website, www.cuttingedgeconsciousness, and we invite you to share this. Anything you want to add, my friend?
That's it. It was great to be here again, and we look forward to doing it again next week.
See you next week.
Take care.